All right, hello everyone, and welcome back to Star Wars Mark of Balance. My name is Mark, and today I want to give you guys a book review for the first book in the new Reign of the Empire trilogy of novels by Alexander Freed, titled The Mask of Fear. Here's the cover. We got my girl Mon Mothma front and center, so you know I was excited. Now, Alexander Freed is no stranger to book trilogies in the Star Wars galaxy. He previously wrote the Alphabet Squadron trilogy, which I haven't finished, but I enjoyed the first novel of. And what I took away from that is that Alexander Freed is an incredible writer. Probably the most technically proficient writer working for Lucasfilm Publishing today. So I was really excited to see him bring his talent to this time period. And what we're talking about is between episodes 3 and 4. Specifically, the formation of the new empire and the political landscape surrounding that. This is so fascinating because we've seen this time period explored before to varying degrees in other shows and books like The Bad Batch, Andor, and Rebels, but we've never seen it to this degree of detail from a political perspective. Now, I mentioned Andor, and a lot of people have compared the tone and the vibe of this novel to the Andor series, and I can definitely see why. The obvious parallel is that the title is The Mask of Fear, which is a direct reference to Nemik's manifesto. Oppression is the mask of fear. But I do think the parallels with that series will only grow more and more as this trilogy goes on. I think we might even get a Luthen cameo, to be completely honest. I don't think that's outside the realm of possibility. The advertised main characters of this trilogy are Mon Mothma, Bail Organa, and Saw Gerrera. I say advertised because this first novel, Saw Gerrera isn't really one of the main characters. It's actually an ex-separatist assassin named Saujen. I think that's how you say his name. So I just wanted to temper any expectations up front from Saw Gerrera fanboys. You don't get a dedicated Saw Gerrera perspective in this book, but I do think that will change moving forward. We also get some other side character perspectives that I wasn't crazy about, but I do think they will play a pivotal role because they do get so much time spent on them in this first book. But who we're really dealing with are the three architects of the rebellion, Mon, Bail, and Saw. Overall, I enjoyed this book. I do think there are some slow moments throughout it, and it definitely feels like a setup novel for what's to come after it. But this time period is so fascinating. We get to see the fallout of the Jedi genocide. We get to see the backdoor political dealings of senators and imperial governors vying for power in different ways. And we got Mon Mothma and Bail Organa in the middle of all of it, in the middle of the Imperial Senate, trying to scrape together any piece of democracy they can and make sure that they do their duty to serve the people of the galaxy, to make sure that Palpatine does not get absolute power, which unfortunately we know he does, but the road to get there, the journey to get there with these two characters is really interesting. And they do some things that might surprise you. They're not the goody two-shoes that we might be familiar with. But my main criticism, like I said, is that this does very much feel like a book one, and at 500 pages, it's pretty daunting, I think, for casual Star Wars fan readers to dive into. So I just want to be as open and honest as I can be with you, so you know if you really want to take this journey and read this novel. This criticism does extend to most of Alexander Freed's work for me. Even though I did like Alphabet Squadron, the second book in that trilogy, I felt like a lot of the time there were things happening, but the plot wasn't progressing. So I think pacing is his biggest issue, at least for me and my taste. And there's definitely some of that in this book. There were moments where I was like, this is detailed and it's beautifully written, but we're not getting anywhere, or at least we could be getting there a lot quicker. So at 500 pages, I thought this could probably be around 400, to be completely honest. I do, however, have a lot of hope for this trilogy because Alexander Freed is such an impressive writer. His vocabulary and imaginative use of figurative language, along with deep knowledge of Star Wars, makes me think that we're in very good hands over the next two novels. I mean, there are some chapters in here and there are some passages that are so in the weeds about political factions and remote planets and governments that I just don't know how he conceived of all of this. I don't know how much he was asking the Lucasfilm Story Group to contribute to this. He had to have written a lot of canon into this book, new canon that we haven't seen before, even in like those encyclopedias. I feel like he is adding a lot across this book. Briefly diving into the plot and character journeys of this novel, I'm not going to get into any spoilers, but I just want to paint the picture. Mon Mothma is trying to gather a coalition of senators from both ex-Republic worlds that are now Imperial worlds and Separatist worlds, trying to bring them into the new Empire to create a band of senators under the new Imperial umbrella that can effectively oppose the Emperor and him trying to solicit all the power for himself. She can't do it alone, and she can't do it with just the Imperial senators because a lot of them are in favor of the new empire because they stopped the war and brought peace to the galaxy. So she's pulling all the political tricks out of her bag to try and get these senators to believe in her as a leader, which sometimes she has to convince them, but to also try and stay one step ahead of the Empire and the ISB because she is being watched at all times and they're suspicious of her, but they can't overtly do anything against her. But we do see that she goes through torture and intimidation, and a lot of that was surprising in a way because you thought kind of the worst of it was in Andor, but we see even in the early days of the Empire, Mon Mothma was going through it. With Bail Organa, he is on a mission to clear the name of the Jedi because he feels like if he can show that the Empire killed the Jedi for no good reason, he can show the corruption of the new regime. And that is not a popular opinion to take. A lot of other senators, Mon Mothma included, don't think that this is a worthwhile venture. It's a really cool perspective switch to see a lot of senators seeing the Jedi as this weird cult of religious figures who just happened to lead the clone army during the Clone Wars. And their execution as traitors of the new empire doesn't really move them. They kind of move on and try to go about their business as senators and represent their worlds. They don't really care about the Jedi. So we see Bail Organa is super fiery in this novel because he wants other people to see the Jedi as he saw them. He was close with Yoda and Obi-Wan, but also he has a new daughter, and that daughter is from one of those Jedi. So I think in the back of Bail Organa's mind, we see that there's an urgency here because one day she could be in the crosshairs of the Empire because of her powers and abilities. What I love about Mon Mothma and Bail Organa in this book is that Alexander Freed writes them in such an interesting and surprising way. We know them as heroes, but in here we see them do things that aren't so heroic in the name of winning the political games. And to a degree, from an outside perspective, you can kind of understand why people see them in a certain light. Mon Mothma, to some people, is a very unpopular figure. Some people see Bail as charismatic, but overly virtuous. We even have tension between Bail and Mon, which I was really surprised by, because we saw them in the same cohort as Padme, but at the end of the day, they didn't really see eye to eye. And as someone who loves Mon Mothma, this book definitely gave me a new look into her, because she's a politician through and through in this novel, for better or for worse, and I'll let you interpret that any way you'd like, especially if you read this novel. Now, the third main character is someone called Saujin. He's the ex-separatist assassin that I talked about earlier. I don't know if I'm saying that name right. Maybe it's Sojin. Not sure. But he is a cold-blooded, cybernetically enhanced killer who was created for one purpose and one purpose only, to be a weapon for the separatists. Now, he's an extremely abrasive character that is unfeeling through the first couple of chapters, and to be honest, he's pretty hard to connect with right away. But I do think he goes on a satisfying journey over the course of the novel as we peel back the layers of his character and his backstory. He's also an ex-separatist, so seeing him and Saw interact and that tension between him and the crew gives his chapters a lot of weight and intrigue. So that really kept that storyline going for me. I mentioned earlier, there are some other side characters that get a number of chapters in here that I frankly wasn't that interested in, and I'm not very much attached to their story, but maybe in the next couple novels it really pays off, and they give us that more boots on the ground perspective of the common people in all of this. We're not following, Senator Mothma or Bail Organa. We're not following Saw Gerrera, who is the leader of this group of guerrilla fighters. We're just seeing people with day jobs in the Empire, which Andor excelled at. So I don't want to count these guys out this early, because Cyril was a character in season 1 of Andor that I enjoyed, but, I wasn't really connecting with him. And then in season 2, he just becomes one of the best characters in Star Wars. So I do want to give them space. I do think Alexander Freed has a plan for them. This first outing for those characters isn't the most intriguing. To close, I did enjoy this book. I think it is a good introduction to this new trilogy, and I think now that the groundwork has been laid, I think the following books will be even stronger. And if you miss Andor, like I miss Andor, I think this book will definitely scratch that itch. From a political standpoint, at least, if you really liked the Mon Mothma storyline, I think that is really the strength of this book. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see some cameos, not cameos, I hate using that word, but we might see some familiar faces from Andor pop up in this trilogy. I think it wouldn't be crazy to see Luthen and Kleya, because Luthen and Mon Mothma at the beginning of Andor are clearly working together and they're familiar with each other. I think it would make a lot of sense if we saw that initial introduction in these books. I'm not sure when they're planning on releasing the sequel to this novel, but I know for a fact I will be picking it up day one. I hope this review was helpful for you. I know a 500-page novel dealing with the political side of Star Wars is very daunting, but I hope the insights and overview I gave in here help you make a more informed decision. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Let me know if you enjoy the book content. I like talking about Star Wars books a lot, so let me know if you check this out and want to talk about it in the comments below. Would appreciate it. Like, subscribe, do all those things. And as always, stay safe, stay healthy, and may the Force be with you. Peace.